There's a famous quote from the French poet Charles Baudelaire: "I always feel like I'd be happier anywhere else than where I am." It speaks to the restlessness in our hearts, that persistent itch that tells us life must be better somewhere else. Maybe some other city, some other job, some other version of ourselves we haven't yet met. We imagine that just beyond the horizon lies a better life, a more fulfilling experience, and a feeling of contentment we can't quite grasp here in the present. This sense of longing is captured beautifully in a short story often credited to Friedrich Nietzsche. The story goes like this. There's an old stonemason, tired, sunburnt, sweaty, hammering away at a massive rock day after day. It's hot, brutal work. In his misery, he cries out to God.
I wish I could be the sun.
With a sudden cosmic humor, God grants this wish, and the stonemason becomes the sun, a blazing source of heat and power, shining down upon the earth below. For a moment, he feels invincible, until a cluster of clouds drifts in front of his rays. Suddenly, he's blocked. His glory muted, his influence stifled. Angered by his newfound limitation, he begs again.
Then let me be the clouds.
And so he becomes vast billows of mist floating across the sky, filled with droplets of water that can release torrents of rain. He thinks he's finally free to roam, to darken the day at will, until the wind picks up and whisks him away, scattering the clouds like dust. Infuriated, he calls out,
Then let me be the wind.
Before he knows it, he's howling across the land with incredible force. Trees bow to him, oceans swell, and deserts shift under his power. He believes he has at last found the role where nothing can stand in his path, until he meets a mountain, a massive, immovable presence that will not budge no matter how fiercely he blows. He unleashes whirlwinds and storms, but the mountain remains steadfast, unyielding. In frustration, he screams, Then let me be that rock! And so he becomes solid stone, towering, impervious, an unbreakable fixture in the landscape. He's finally at peace, or so he thinks. But one day, he feels an annoying, repetitive tapping on his surface. A tiny vibration, again and again, as if someone is chipping away at him. He looks and sees an old stonemason, much like he once was, hammering into his side. And he realizes he is right back where he started. The moral of this tale is clever and resonates across cultures and centuries. We often yearn to be somewhere else or something else, believing if we only changed our circumstances, we'd finally be happy. Yet we circle back to the same human condition, the same existential challenges that come with being alive. Today, I want to explore that universal longing for somewhere else, why it haunts us, and whether there's a way to find peace here and now. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let's dive into the heart of this all too familiar feeling. This persistent whisper that the grass must be greener on the other side, the lure of elsewhere. When Baudelaire wrote, "I always feel like I'd be happier anywhere else than where I am," he succinctly summarized a feeling that might be as old as humanity itself. It's not just about physical places, like wanting to move to a different country or city. It's about the belief that our current state, our present condition, is somehow insufficient. Maybe it's your job, your relationships, your physical appearance, or even your own personality traits. There's a sense that if we could only be over there, or if we could only become someone different, then that restless hum of dissatisfaction would vanish. It's easy to see why this feeling is so common. We grow up being told to reach for more. A better education, a better paying job, a bigger house, a nicer car, the perfect romantic partner. Ambition can be healthy. It can drive progress and innovation. But it can also become a double-edged sword, stoking a mindset that is never satisfied. It feeds the idea that wherever we're standing is not quite enough, and that the next goal, once achieved, will solve all our problems. We chase promotions, we chase new relationships, we chase a new city across the ocean. And for a short time, the honeymoon period may bring excitement and relief. But eventually, that same nagging discontent resurfaces. Social media compounds this feeling. We're constantly bombarded with images of other people's fabulous vacations, their success stories, their new life adventures. We see snapshots of smiling faces in exotic locales. We see highlight reels of people in seemingly perfect relationships. We rarely see the arguments, the loneliness, or the mundane chores that exist behind those glossy images. This partial narrative leads us to believe that they have found the elusive, happier place, while we're stuck in an inferior reality. The difference we assume is location, job, partner, some external factor that surely must be the cause of their bliss. This longing for elsewhere isn't limited to physical geography. Sometimes we're convinced that if we could only change who we are, become more outgoing, more confident, more creative, or more financially successful, then we'd access a realm of happiness denied to us in our current form. Self-improvement is noble, but if the underlying motive is the belief that we're intrinsically not good enough, then we end up perpetuating the cycle of dissatisfaction. The old stonemason's journey in Nietzsche's parable mirrors that process of incessant shape-shifting. Each time he assumes a new role, he experiences a momentary burst of power or a sense of liberation, only to discover a new limitation. It's a symbolic representation of how life works. Every role, every identity, and every environment comes with its own pros and cons. There is no magical vantage point from which you can transcend all limitations. Reality, in all its forms, carries challenges, constraints, and unforeseen frustrations. So if the temptation to jump ship or transform ourselves is so universal, how do we deal with it? Must we resign ourselves to a restless life, or is there a healthier approach that acknowledges both our yearning and the necessity of finding contentment in the present moment? The psychology of restlessness. Human beings are wired to notice what's lacking. Evolutionarily, this was essential for survival. Our ancestors needed to be on high alert for threats and scarcity. Always scanning the horizon for new food sources or new dangers can keep a species alive. As a result, our brains are constantly attuned to what's wrong or missing in our environment. It's an inbuilt negativity bias that helps us detect problems quickly, but can also lead us to dwell on dissatisfaction. When that ancient wiring meets modern society, the outcome can be a perpetual sense of something's off. For many of us, "I'd be happier somewhere else" is a mental reflex rather than a considered conclusion. We look at our circumstances and zero in on what doesn't quite fit our ideal. It could be the job that feels stifling, the city that feels too noisy or too quiet, or even the routine of everyday life that feels monotonous. We latch onto any discontent and interpret it as proof that we need to relocate, externally or internally. Additionally, psychological factors like the hedonic treadmill come into play. The hedonic treadmill is the tendency for us to return to a baseline level of happiness, no matter what positive or negative events come our way. Win the lottery, and after the initial euphoria, you'll eventually settle back into a familiar emotional baseline. Lose a job, and after the initial stress and despair, you tend to gravitate back to your characteristic set point. This phenomenon explains why even major life changes, like moving to a dream location, can lose their sparkle over time. After the novelty wears off, we adapt to the new normal, and any lingering restlessness that was within us remains. There's also a strong social component. We might see friends, acquaintances, or even influencers online who appear to be living the dream. They travel the globe, they post pictures from remote beaches, they brag, often humbly, about their perfect new start in a foreign city. The narrative of "just leave your old life behind and chase your bliss" becomes romanticized. Our restlessness is then confirmed by these real or perceived stories of people who found happiness by being somewhere else. Even though we logically know that social media doesn't paint the full picture, emotionally we can't help but compare. Furthermore, personal insecurities amplify this longing. If you feel insecure about your career path, you might attribute your sense of inadequacy to your job or your current city. If you feel unfulfilled in your relationships, it's easy to believe that somewhere else, with different people, you would feel whole. This is not to say you should never look for better circumstances. Sometimes relocation or career change can indeed be beneficial, but it's crucial to distinguish between a constructive desire for improvement and a compulsive chase fueled by restlessness and unrealistic expectations. Finally, from a mental health standpoint, states like anxiety and depression often convince us that we need external change to fix internal pain. If your mind is in turmoil, it's tempting to believe that a new city, a different social circle, or a new routine will magically heal you. While change can offer a fresh perspective, underlying psychological struggles often persist unless addressed more directly. through therapy, self-reflection, or other forms of healing. To break the cycle of restlessness, it helps to recognize these patterns. We can't fix what we don't see. By acknowledging that we might be stuck on a hedonic treadmill, or that we're influenced by social comparisons, we can begin to untangle the real roots of our dissatisfaction. The search for identity. Our longing to be somewhere else isn't limited to geography. It's also wrapped up in our sense of self. We might think, I wish I were a more confident person, or if only I were more adventurous, I'd be happier. This is another variation of the old stonemason's wish to become the sun, then the cloud, then the wind, and so on. We believe a different identity will unlock the life we crave. Identity is a complex tapestry woven from our experiences, values, and innate traits. But it's not static. It shifts and evolves as we grow and learn. Often we see glimpses of other possible selves in the people around us, like that charismatic friend who's the life of every party, or that driven entrepreneur who seems to have endless energy for new projects. We then fantasize about inhabiting their traits, convinced that those qualities are the key to happiness. Yet, we frequently overlook the challenges inherent in these different identities. Take the charismatic friend who's always in the spotlight. They might struggle with feeling misunderstood or not taken seriously. The super-driven entrepreneur might grapple with burnout, constant pressure, and personal sacrifices that remain hidden from public view. In other words, every way of being comes with trade-offs. There's no identity that is purely sunny skies, just as there's no physical place on Earth that's free of storms. In our pursuit of a different self, we can also lose sight of our own strengths. The desire to be someone else can blind us to the unique gifts and perspectives we already possess. You might envy the bold traveler who backpacks solo across continents, but forget that you have a talent for nurturing deep emotional connections with friends and family right where you are. Or maybe you admire the extroverted coworker who can network effortlessly, yet you overlook your ability to focus and create meaningful work in a quieter setting. By chasing another identity, we risk undervaluing the blessings of our own authentic nature. Moreover, identity-based restlessness can stem from a fear of missing out. FOMO. We see multiple paths in life and worry we've chosen the wrong one. The stonemason wanted to experience being the sun, the cloud, the wind, and the rock, hoping that each transformation might reveal a life superior to the one he knew. In reality, none of those roles provided the ultimate fulfillment he was seeking. This doesn't mean we shouldn't cultivate personal growth. It's absolutely healthy to strive for self-improvement, to expand our comfort zones, and to evolve as individuals. The question is whether we're doing so from a place of acceptance and curiosity, or from a desperate need to escape who we currently are. Sustainable transformation arises when we acknowledge our present reality, our strengths, our weaknesses, and mindfully choose new paths. It's not about self-rejection, it's about self-expansion. So, the next time you catch yourself wishing you could become a brand new version of you, ask, is there a particular quality I admire that I can develop without rejecting the core of who I am? That question might lead you to more grounded growth, rather than a frantic chase for a shiny new persona that promises fulfillment but rarely delivers on that promise. The power of presence. A major antidote to the "I'd be happier somewhere else" mindset is learning to cultivate presence. The art of truly being here in this moment with your current reality. Presence doesn't mean passivity or resignation. You can still have goals, aspirations, and dreams. But you learn to inhabit the now without constantly trying to escape it. Mindfulness practices like meditation or simply taking a few moments to focus on your breath can help. When you're present, you notice the richness of your immediate experience, sounds, textures, emotions, without judging them as good or bad. You become more intimately connected with what's happening right here, right now. And ironically, the more you ground yourself in the present, the more clarity you often gain about whether a change in circumstance is genuinely needed. When we're stuck daydreaming about being somewhere else, we often overlook opportunities and sources of contentment that exist in our current environment. Maybe there's a local park you've never explored, or a creative hobby you've never fully pursued. Perhaps there's a friendship in your neighborhood that could deepen if you invested more energy into it. Our quest for elsewhere can blind us to the potential for joy that's already within reach. Presence also helps us respond to challenges more effectively. Rather than being paralyzed by the thought that everything would be better if only I were far away from here, we begin to see workable actions in the present context. You might realize that your dissatisfaction at work stems from a lack of balance. So you experiment with boundary setting or carving out time for a personal passion project. Or you might recognize that your yearning for a different identity is actually a call to develop specific traits, like assertiveness or creativity, which you can practice today without uprooting your entire life. Some people find journaling helpful. Writing down your daily experiences and feelings can anchor your awareness in the moment. It also creates a space to reflect on your small victories and the aspects of your life that are going well, things you might take for granted if you're always daydreaming about an alternate reality. Another way to foster presence is to deliberately engage with your community. Volunteer work, local events, or simply striking up a conversation with a neighbor can open your eyes to the interconnectedness of your environment. When we see ourselves as part of a larger tapestry of human stories, it's easier to find meaning where we stand. We may still have aspirations to travel or relocate, but our longing becomes less of an escape and more of a journey we undertake from a place of wholeness. Presence teaches us that life unfolds moment by moment. If you can't find a measure of peace or fulfillment where you are now, uprooting your life might offer temporary relief, but won't necessarily lead to lasting contentment. That sense of calm or gratitude has to be built from within, nurtured by daily practice, and carried with you wherever you go. Embracing the journey, not the destination. A key insight from all this talk of stonemasons, sun, wind, and far-off places is that life itself is a journey of continual change. The idea that we can reach a final, unchanging state of happiness is a mirage. Circumstances shift, our needs evolve, and even our dreams transform over time. When we fixate on arriving at that magical place, literal or metaphorical, where we believe we'll stay happy forever, we set ourselves up for disappointment. Instead, it can be more fulfilling to see happiness as something woven into the process of living. This means finding meaning in our struggles, joy in our small wins, and acceptance of our limitations. It also means understanding that dissatisfaction is not necessarily the enemy. It can be a catalyst for growth. Feeling restless might prompt you to learn a new skill, approach problems differently, or expand your social circle. The trick is to differentiate between healthy restlessness, which nudges us toward constructive change, and destructive restlessness, which sends us chasing fantasies. If you do decide to make a big move, switch careers, relocate to a new country, or reinvent yourself in some significant way, try not to carry the illusion that this change will fix all your problems or guarantee perpetual happiness. Any real journey has its share of rough patches. If you're prepared for that, you can greet challenges with resilience and adaptability rather than disillusionment. Travelers often share that the joy of a trip lies not just in the destination, but in every moment along the way. The people you meet, the unexpected detours, the meals you savor, the stories you accumulate. If you bring that same mentality to life at large, you can discover pockets of wonder in the routine. Even daily chores can hold a certain beauty if approached mindfully. The smell of fresh laundry, the satisfaction of cleaning a cluttered desk, the mindfulness of preparing a home-cooked meal. Moreover, recognizing life as a journey helps us be kinder to ourselves. We understand that there's no one final identity we must achieve. We're all in a continual state of becoming, shaped by each experience. The stonemason's transformations highlight that no identity or status is inherently superior or free from problems. Similarly, the places we live or the careers we choose will always have trade-offs. Adopting this perspective allows you to see your life as a narrative unfolding chapter by chapter. There's a sense of anticipation rather than frustration, because you're not obsessed with arriving. You're open to the lessons and opportunities of each phase. This flexibility can also reduce the fear of making the wrong choice, because you begin to see that each choice, right or wrong, is part of the larger tapestry of who you are becoming. Ultimately, if we can learn to embrace the journey, we realize that anywhere else could indeed be exciting, but it's not guaranteed to be better. We also learn that whoever else we think we should be might be interesting, but not necessarily happier than who we are now. there's value in living fully and authentically in whatever chapter of life we currently inhabit. In the end, Baudelaire's statement rings true. We often feel that anywhere else would bring us greater happiness. But the stonemason's journey warns us that whatever we chase might simply lead us in circles if we haven't addressed our deeper restlessness. By blending self-awareness, gratitude, and presence, we can develop a more nuanced relationship with change. Sometimes moving on is exactly what we need. Other times, learning to be at peace with where we are might be the greatest victory of all. We began with Baudelaire's poignant line, "I always feel like I'd be happier anywhere else than where I am." And Nietzsche's clever story about the stonemason who wanted to become the sun, the cloud, the wind, and the rock, only to return to a familiar state of discontent. Both remind us that restlessness is part of the human condition. We're all wired to wonder what might lie over the next hill or who we might become in another life. But maybe true fulfillment isn't about finding the perfect place or the perfect identity. Instead, it's about living fully in each chapter of our journey, embracing both the comfort and the struggle, the beauty and the mess. It's about understanding that no single change can bestow everlasting happiness, and that real contentment involves balancing healthy ambition with gratitude for the life we're already living. Thanks for watching. If you found these ideas thought-provoking, feel free to leave a comment below. Share your own experiences with restlessness, your tips for finding contentment, or any personal stories you'd like to discuss. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you'd like more content on philosophy, psychology, and the human experience. Remember, the grass isn't necessarily greener on the other side, it's green where you water it. Sometimes the happiness you're chasing might be closer than you think. Until next time, take care and keep exploring, both within and without.